He gently guided me toward the bed. The weight of him over me made me surrender completely. My fingers, which had been clutching the sheets, uncurled as he slowly slid them down my cheek, finding my lips again. I had fully surrendered. But how had we arrived here, in the heart of this stone and timber lodge, with the scent of pine and rain hanging in the air and the world outside reduced to the whisper of the wind through the firs? Welcome to Heartstrings and Scars, where we give voice to the unspoken stories of love and loss. We believe every experience holds a lesson waiting to be discovered. If you enjoy our content, kindly subscribe to our channel and never miss a story. Our story, like all great cataclysms of the heart, began in silence. It was an ordinary evening 2 years after Henry's death, when the quiet of our home on the edge of the lake had become its own entity. His son, Lucas, and I were in the great room, the enormous stone hearth crackling and spitting embers casting dancing shadows on the high, beamed ceiling. We were watching some old film, a black-and-white thriller with a vein of desperate romance running through it. Lucas was sprawled on the worn leather couch beside me, his long legs stretched out, an arm resting casually along the back. He looked as if he'd been carved from the very woods that surrounded us, solid, enduring, and owning his space. It was the first time I truly saw him, not as the boy Henry had left behind, but as the man he had become. His shoulders were broader than I remembered, his jaw set with a new, firm line. The thought was immediate and unwelcome. He is Henry's son, I reminded myself, a desperate mantra against a sudden, unsettling warmth. As the film's tension mounted, Lucas leaned slightly, his arm on the couch, now a warm barrier just behind my shoulders. His proximity was a tangible thing, a pressure in the air. For a fleeting, charged moment, our eyes met in the flickering firelight. In his gaze, I saw a depth that startled me, a profound and unnerving knowing. A part of me scrambled for normalcy. It's nothing, just the movie, the shadows. But my body wasn't listening. During one of the film's hushed, romantic scenes, I felt the warm ghost of his breath against my temple. He had shifted closer, so subtly I might have imagined it, but the heat of him was undeniable. His hand was so near my shoulder I could feel its potential, the barest whisper of a touch that never came. A chaotic mix of alarm and a strange, terrifying thrill coiled in my stomach. "Sophia," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very leather of the couch. "I wanted to tell you something." I turned, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. "Yes, Lucas." My own voice was a tremor. "Thank you," he said, his gaze unwavering. "After Dad, you've always been here. You didn't have to stay, but you did. Because of you, this place still feels like a home." His words were a kindness that felt like a blow, leaving me vulnerable. "Of course, Lucas," I managed, forcing a smile. "I'm glad you're here." "Me too," he said, his voice dropping even lower. "Seeing you here, it sets my world right." The air between us grew thick, heavy with unspoken things. He must have felt it too, because he drew his hand back, but his eyes never left mine. In that moment, a slow, dangerous ember had been kindled, and I knew, with a certainty that frightened me, it was not going to be easily extinguished. In the days that followed, Lucas's presence was a constant, gentle pressure. He began chopping wood for the hearth, his movements fluid and powerful. He fixed the perpetually dripping tap in the kitchen, his brow furrowed in concentration. One afternoon, as I was kneading dough on the heavy butcher block island, I felt his eyes on me. He was leaning against the doorframe, just watching. But it wasn't a casual glance. His gaze traced the line of my back, the curve of my hip, the way a loose strand of my auburn hair had escaped its knot. I tried to ignore it, to dismiss it as my own loneliness painting meaning where there was none. but the thrill was undeniable. And worse, I liked it. It had been years since I'd felt seen, truly seen, as a woman. Later, after he'd gone outside, I caught my reflection in the dark glass of the kitchen window, my own image superimposed over the deep green of the forest. I was in my 40s with threads of silver now woven into my hair, but my body was strong from years of hiking these trails, my waist still defined, my hips full. For the first time in a long time, I saw not just Henry's widow, but Sophia. And I felt a stirring of something I thought had died with my husband. My birthday arrived on a Tuesday. I had driven into the small town for supplies, and returned as dusk was settling, painting the lake in hues of lavender and rose. When I pushed open the heavy oak door, the sight stopped me cold. The great room was transformed. It wasn't just candles, it was dozens of them, their flames reflecting in every polished surface. There were mason jars filled with wildflowers from the meadow, and the clean, sharp scent of cedar filled the air. A table was set for two before the fire. It wasn't a birthday celebration. It was a seduction. Lucas emerged from the shadows, and my breath caught. He wore a crisp, dark shirt, the sleeves rolled to his forearms, and trousers that fit him in a way that was utterly arresting. "I wanted tonight to be special for you," he said, a faint smile playing on his lips as he handed me a box. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a dress of deep, emerald green velvet, the color of moss in the ancient parts of the forest. It had a low, draped back and a slit that promised more than it showed. "You bought this for me?" I whispered, stunned. "I saw it, and I could only picture you in it. I'm sure it will look amazing on you," he said, his gaze intense. In my bedroom, the cool, soft velvet slid over my skin like a second self. Staring in the mirror, I felt a dormant part of me awaken. The green brought out the red in my hair. The daring cut showcased the long line of my back, and the slit offered an elegant glimpse of my leg. "This is madness," I thought, a wild smile touching my lips. "I'm dressing up for Lucas." Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to support us and join our growing community. We promise you stories that will make you reflect, question, and maybe even see yourself in the characters we share. When I walked back into the great room, his eyes locked on me, and the air crackled. The admiration in his gaze was a physical touch, and it made me feel both powerful and flustered. "I was right," he murmured, his eyes still devouring me. "You look absolutely stunning." Dinner was a dream. Wine, the crackling fire, soft music I didn't recognize. The conversation drifted from Henry to us, to the here and now. "Sophia," Lucas said, his voice suddenly serious. "How can a woman like you be alone? I just don't understand it." "Loneliness isn't always a choice, Lucas," I replied, my fingers trembling slightly on the stem of my glass. He leaned forward, his eyes burning into mine. "But it doesn't have to be a permanent state. A woman like you shouldn't be overlooked. You have needs, Sophia, and I'm here." The words hung between us, stark and undeniable. My throat went dry. Slowly, he stood, circled the table, and came to my side. He rested a hand on the table's edge, leaning in, his scent of pine and clean soap enveloping me. "I can't hide this anymore," he whispered, and then his lips were on mine. It was an explosion, a release of every charged glance, every unspoken thought, every moment of tension that had built between us for weeks. It was passion and warmth and a connection, so profound it stole my breath. His hand found the small of my back, pressing me into him, and what began as shock melted into a response I couldn't have stopped if I'd wanted to. The world dissolved into the feeling of his mouth on mine. Then reality crashed in. I pulled back, breathless and trembling. This isn't right," I stammered. "Lucas, I need to go to my room." He looked at me, his breathing as ragged as mine. "I'm sorry, Sophia," he said, his voice calm but laced with fire. But I couldn't stop myself from feeling this. I fled without another word. In my room, I leaned against the closed door, my heart hammering. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the velvet of the dress a cool caress against my heated skin. How did this happen? But the wine and the whirlwind of emotion were a potent combination, and I fell onto the pillows, exhaustion pulling me under. I woke to a faint sound, the click of my door latch. My eyes fluttered open to see a silhouette in the doorway, backlit by the soft light from the hall. "Sophia," Lucas whispered. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him, plunging the room into near darkness, save for the moonlight filtering through the window. My heart began to pound a frantic, heavy rhythm. "I know I shouldn't be here," he said, his voice a low, determined murmur as he approached the bed. "But I can't help it." The look in his eyes held me captive. Every rational thought, every rule I had lived by, evaporated in the heat of his gaze. I knew I had to answer him, had to give voice to the truth I had been fighting for so long. Taking a shaky breath, I met his eyes. "I know I need to give you an answer, Lucas," I said, my voice laced with a raw honesty that surprised even me. "I feel the same way, and I want you." A look of profound relief washed over his face. A soft smile touched my lips, and I closed my eyes for a moment, gathering my courage. "Please," I whispered, my own hands moving to my shoulders. "Before I lose my nerve." I slowly slipped the thin velvet straps down my arms. The dress pooled at my waist and then fell in a silent heap to the floor. Lucas's sharp intake of breath was the only sound in the room. Without hesitation, he was beside me, his lips finding mine again, his kiss full of a desperate passion that sealed our fate. His hands slid around my waist, pulling my bare skin tight against him as the kiss deepened. And that is when he gently guided me toward the bed. The weight of him over me made me surrender completely. My fingers, which had been clutching the sheets, uncurled as he carefully lowered me onto the mattress. His hands slid down my cheek, finding my lips again, his touch both a question and a declaration. In that moment, the boundaries built by grief and convention and years of propriety vanished into the moonlit dark. I had fully surrendered, not just my body, but the lonely, guarded fortress of my heart. And as we moved together, two solitary souls finding solace in a forbidden embrace, I knew my life, which had been paused for so long, had just begun again.